Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I'm going to be talking about my absolute favorite knives in different price ranges of 2020. A few things to keep in mind. I'm going to be doing the same format that a lot of different YouTube channels do. We're going to be talking about my favorite budget knives, my favorite mid-range knives, and my favorite high-end knives. All of these knives, released in 2020. Keep in mind, despite me having handled a ton of stuff in 2020, I still didn't handle everything. So if one of your favorite knives was, not on the list, it could be because I just didn't handle it. It's just not possible for me to handle every last little thing. Lots of this stuff is still available, but a lot of it isn't available. I'm not really going to keep something off the list just because it's not available. I'm going to give you guys my honest thoughts based on the stuff that I handled, right? There's going to be some honorable mentions. We're going to start off with a few oddball honorable mentions, then we're going to talk about budget knives, then we're going to talk about mid-range knives, then we're going to talk about high-end knives, and then at the end I'm going to tell you guys the top 3 in each of those categories, the absolute 3 best of 2020. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you'd like to support me, you can find my Patreon link down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's start off here with some weird ones. Okay, I know how much people really like the Quiet Carry Waypoint. And truthfully, I liked it. I thought it was a great knife. What is it? Not the LC200N is the liner. I always mix this up. But the Vanex Super Clean, or Vanex 37 on the blade, is completely and totally impenetrable to corrosion. It's also an incredible EDC profile, right? It's titanium. It's got a nice plain simple drop point blade, or you could call it reverse tanto, right? It's got a plain aesthetic. A lot of people would say this should be right up your alley. Why isn't it higher up on the list? Why isn't it an actual candidate? Here's why. It's just a little bit too small for me. This is my favorite mixed with my criteria of the best, right? It's all things together. I have to actually consider my own opinion. I did not fall in love with this knife. I fully recognize exactly how incredible it is. If you picked this up, you're a lucky person. You made a good choice, right? These are $300 knives. They're expensive. It'll likely be, the perfect EDC for lots of different people. It's just not quite there for me. I had to actually lock into it for it to be, a candidate for anything. So the reason I'm not including it in any specific category is because it just quite didn't do it for me. So I'm just letting you guys know, right? Earlier on, I did a video called Best of 2020 So Far, which is kind of leading up to this video, the official final video, but that's why it wasn't included, right? Still good. Moving on here, this is not a knife item, but I had to include it because I was just so happy, right? So it's not actually part of the list, but it kind of is part of the list. The Flytanium scales for the Shaman. Oh my gosh, that was the best non-knife thing to release in 2020. I know there was a whole bunch of stuff. This isn't going to be about gear. I just had to put this on the list because I was so happy. They finally made, titanium scales for the Shaman. I love that. Had to put that on here. And then moving on here, another little oddball. I liked this knife. It's not quite a budget knife. It's kind of more towards the mid-range. I don't know. These are $90. This is the Ferrum Forge Stinger in Nitro V Steel, which is okay. It's pretty good, right? The ergonomics are fantastic. The carry profile is fantastic. This is a really, really good knife. It's just not quite something that made it into my, any of the 3 categories, right? So I still wanted to include it in the video. I just couldn't bring myself to be like, yeah, it's one of the absolute best of the best. It's pretty good, right? All right. There's a million other things I could have included in this initial section, but those are the 3 that stood out to me as far as oddballs that I still wanted to talk about. Moving on to the budget category, we'll start with an honorable mention, not quite top 3 for budget. Honorable mention, CJRB feldspar. Excellent. Technically was designed or created or conceptualized in 2019. Didn't hit shelves till 2020. D2 steel and contour G10. This is excellent. A little bit more bulky than some of the other knives on the list. I really like this one. I think that it was just slightly beat out by some of the other ones on the list. But you can pick these up still today for something like $35 to $40. Excellent. Not quite the best. Honorable mention, not quite the best, budget knife in 2020, but pretty darn close. Moving on here, man, this was hard to not be a part of top 3. If I was, I honestly had a hard time not putting the CIVIVI Odium, which comes in around $50, in the top 3. It's a little bit small for some people's liking. I think a lot of people are going to prefer just a slightly larger blade. You can get a full purchase on this guy. Beautiful shadow boxing between the liners and the G10 scales, which are not contoured but very heavily chamfered, right? Nice access to the opening hole. This is excellent. If you're on the fence about this, yeah, I mean, it's not quite there for me, right? Some other knives in the budget category just barely beat this knife out, but it's definitely it's a solid honorable mention. The actual top 3, definitely the CJRB Rhea, specifically any version of the CJRB Rhea I could put in this, but specifically this version in micarta and AR RPM 9. I know people are going to get mad at me. That version's not, if I can't find it anywhere. It's still something that I handled that I just thought, wow, this really is amazing. I can't believe this is a budget knife, right? Contoured micarta scales. The standard version is G10. You can get the standard version for 37 bucks. This version of it, I think, came in $50, $55. CJRB and Artisan Cutler's proprietary AR RPM 9 steel. Holy crap. This thing is amazing. No matter which version of this knife you pick up, this thing is so good. Nice. I know a lot of people say, you said the odium was too small and this one's not too small. You get a little more cutting edge of this guy. You get a fully flat ground blade. Overall profile is right. So while it is small, there's a lot of other major benefits to this thing, like the style of the pocket clip, whether you go with the upgraded one or the standard one, right? The scales, the access to the thumb stud, the grind of the blade, the steel, even the standard version in 12C27N. Incredible. Minimal hardware, T8 across the board. Oh my goodness, this thing is so close to perfect. Moving on here, yeah, the QSP Parrot for sure. Whether you go with the standard version in D2 and micarta, I think they have OD green, they have this blue jeans that you're seeing here, and then they have the brown micarta, right? Get these things for 30 bucks. There's a lot of good here. There's a lot of places where I think the CJRB kind of beats it, especially like with the minimal hardware and the fact that it's the Rhea's using T8 and this guy's using T6. This is a $30 knife. Access to the thumb stud is incredible. Build quality is incredible. The action is unbelievable. They do sandwich a nylon washer in there between the phosphor bronze and the blade, which gives it that extra, you know, that smooth feeling. Blade profile is so good for EDC. The whole profile is excellent. Now, the reason that this one's slightly above, partially because the lower end one is a little bit less money, and because there was a version of this that looks just like this, came from Knives Plus in S35VN for 60 bucks. Oh my God. This is so good. So good. Pocket clip is excellent. Man. Fit and finish, it wasn't quite as good as the Rhea. Or the one that's about to come, right? It's pretty good, though. I mean, for 30 bucks, it's hard to argue. I've given this knife as gifts multiple times this year, and everybody's happy with it. This is definitely one of the top 3 best budget knives of 2020. And the final candidate, this was late in 2020 when I handled this guy, but the CIVIVI Ordos is absolutely incredible. I have no complaints with this knife anywhere. Except that it has a slightly awkward bill on the pocket clip. You can get a full 4-finger grip on this guy in the choked back or the standard hammer grip position, or you can choke up on it. It's got a nice access to the... A lot of people wanted to know, like, why didn't I include the... whatever the bigger one was. The one that was slightly bigger than this but looked almost exactly the same. I just didn't like it as much. I didn't like the handle profile as much. I didn't like the ratios as much. This knife made more sense to me. The contouring, the cutting edge to overall length ratio, the weight on it is just incredible. It was just better, right? A lot of people ask me about that. Yeah, it's not that not that it skipped my mind or that I was missing something. I thought the Ordos was head and shoulders over the, what the heck was that thing called? It wasn't that important to me because I can't remember the name of it, the other CIVIVI. But anyways, this one, in my opinion, is better. This comes in at 40 bucks. It does use FRN, but I love the milling pattern on it. I love the full bolster look. And because it's got the steel liners underneath, it gives you that feeling of rigidity and solidity, that you don't get in a knife that's just FRN or Grivery like the Bug Out. I really, really hate the scales on the Bug Out and the construction of it because of how it feels. Not because I don't think it's capable. I just don't like how it feels. Anyways, that's not what this video is about. This feels much more solid. Would I have liked it more in G10? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm perfectly happy in this price range, which is, this is a $40 knife, to get 9CR 18 MOV. And is it D2 or 9? I think it's 9CR 18 MOV. Either way, I'd be happy with it. to get 9CR, 18 MOV, and this FRN with that's nicely contoured, nicely chamfered, right? T8 hardware, minimal hardware, excellent blade profile, beautifully thin behind the edge, right? Really good looking, excellent budget knife. Absolutely. Moving on here, let's talk about the mid-range. Honorable mention. This is the Spyderco Canis, made in the Taichung, Taiwan factory through Spyderco. This thing is freaking ugly. And the first time I looked at it, I thought, I do not like that. That is a goofball of a knife, right? But then you get it in hand, and a lot like what you guys have been hearing from other reviewers on YouTube is, oh my gosh, this thing works so well in the hand. It's so beautifully shaped to the human hand. The compression lock is amazing. This thing is using the bushing pivot system, so when you squeeze that compression lock, it just falls shut. S30V, and then you're looking at laminate carbon fiber and G10, which is something that I don't really like. I wish they'd just give us carbon fiber. I think this thing comes in at about 190 bucks. I could be wrong about the price. It's an honorable mention. It's not quite in the top 3. S30V, laminate carbon fiber, 190, whatever it comes in at, right? I think it's somewhere around there. It's really good. This is a really good knife. It's definitely one of the better knives to come out in 2020. It just was right there on the line. Didn't quite make the list for me because the 3 that I'm going to put in mid-range I think are just a little bit better. But this is excellent. That weird blade profile, the reason they put that swedge up there, that awkward chunk that they've cut out of the blade, is to save weight and give the knife balance. Despite looking like it's massively thick behind the edge, it isn't. The blade profile is also really good for EDC. But that knife was made for self-defense. How dare you talk about it in an EDC setting? Despite the fact that 99.9% of people who buy this will just use it for EDC, right? That's the reason that I talk about an EDC setting. Where are you getting those stats? That can't possibly be accurate. They're not official. They're not, I mean, but I'm just, based on what the vast majority of people do with knives that are into this hobby, right? I'm going to say it's much more common that a person will come in contact with a box or an envelope than a person trying to do harm to them while they defend themselves with a pocket knife. I think it is absurdly more likely that you will just cut a box with this than anything else. Okay, rant over. It's a pretty good knife, right? Not quite in the top 3. Moving on here, top 3. We Banter, specifically the version that came out, the exclusive through Blade HQ in 20 CV. The standard version, right, place it in here, because I know people are going to be like, I can't get that knife anymore, that's not fair. You can get the standard Banter in the S35VN and G10, which I still would include on this list. That knife came in at about 110 bucks, right? I know that there are knives out there using G10 and S35VN that you can get for less. It's not about the materials. It's about the overall profile, right? The amount of usable edge. You can get a full purchase on this thing. The carry profile is excellent. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. This is a great everyman's knife. I can't deny how just... It is kind of a boring design, but it just works so well. This is such a perfect EDC knife, right? When they came out with this 20 CV variant, the natural jade, what are these coming at? 123 bucks. That's a good deal, right? All the way around. Price, profile, cutting geometry behind the edge, very, very smooth. Well, not fully flat ground. You've got a small flat up there, but you have a nice drop point blade. Man, this thing was good. Really, really good for 2020. I really like this. Honestly, for me, like, I mean, it was one of my favorites for 2020. For me, as far as like as an enthusiast goes, I don't think like extreme knife enthusiasts are going to find a whole lot here, but they will appreciate the fact that it's so perfectly designed for day-to-day carry, right? That in and of itself will speak to an enthusiast, ironically, despite it being aesthetically boring, and in terms of the elements that go into it, it's boring to a knife enthusiast, right? But it just has that, wow, it's so simple and boring that it's excellent, right? It really is great. Ben Peterson designed this knife. Really, really cool. Moving on here to the second one on the list. I don't think this is going to make a lot of other lists. This was me. This was just me. I'm so shocked that this wasn't more. It was popular. The Wii Snex was popular. Just, I don't know why it wasn't more popular. Based on the custom Snex, right? Titanium and either M390 or 20CV, which are analogs to each other. I can't remember. These are pretty expensive. This mid-range here, what am I defining as mid-range and budget, right? I was kind of foggy about that. Budget on this channel, it's under 75 bucks. Mid-range, anywhere from $100 to about $300, right? And then high end is above $300. somewhere around there, right? I'm not going to start splitting hairs about it. It's just, that's how I feel, generally speaking. I feel like that's how a lot of people are going to feel. This one's on the upper end of mid-range. Really, really nice. Very smooth, beautiful profile, right? The materials are great. The machine work that went into it is great. This thing, I think, was severely underrated. Despite being popular, I think it should have been way more popular. This is absolutely one of my favorite knives of 2020. I love this thing. Low profile flipper tab. It's fairly thick and fairly heavy. Not crazy, but man, it was good. Not going to find too much negative about this knife on the internet. It just didn't get the spotlight, or it didn't get the fire under it, I think, for a lot of people. But I handled this thing and just absolutely loved it. It's definitely on my top 3 for mid-range in 2020. And of course, the Protec Malibu button lock in 20 CV. I know, people are mad. You can't get this right. I am sure that we will be seeing more of this knife. Those of you who have been waiting, I am certain. I don't work for Protec. This is not an official statement, right? I'm just guessing. I'm sure we're going to see more of these. Button lock, incredibly smooth, runs on bearings, 20 CV, made in the USA for $190 to $200, something like that. Very little to complain about here. Extremely minimal hardware, nice pocket clip, beautiful blade profile. They came out in their reverse tanto and this sheep's footy thing, right? God, lightweight. What are these? 7.5, 7 3/4 inches overall. Man, Protec hit a grand slam with this knife. If you have one of these, count yourself lucky. For the rest of you, I'm sure you'll be able to get your hands on this soon. Absolutely. Moving on to the upper end, the higher end. Starting off here with the Oz Machine Company Roosevelt. These are pretty expensive. I want to say they start off at the $500, $550 mark. These are, I mean, it's another, you can see why I like this. It's like, it makes me think of the Spyderco Shaman, but it's shorter, has some different lines. I kind of like the blockiness, right? That's an aesthetic thing, because in hand, it's actually really, really nice. The edges are nicely chamfered. You have the access to the opening hole. These are at least semi-custom, right? Depends on how you define custom and semi-custom. I'm sure people will define it down below and start arguing about it. Whatever. That's why they're so expensive. There's a lot more that goes into this, despite that you're, looking at high-end steel and titanium and bearings, which you can get in the $100 to $200 price point. It's fairly common, right? There's much more work that goes into this. This is a small, these are all small batch. It's run by one person, as far as I know. These are excellent. These are excellent. If you're looking for something in the upper end, you appreciate those extra elements, those extra hours, the extra work that goes into something like this, but you also want something that has a beautiful carry profile, an excellent blade geometry, very thin behind the edge, right? Easy to carry, easy to manipulate. These things are drop shut, smooth, super, super nice blades. Very minimal, extremely minimal look, right? But if that's all you want from your tool and you just want to have something that has those elements that you appreciate, right? Then yeah. Absolutely. But you can't get these right now, which is going to make a lot of people mad. I'm sorry. This is definitely one of my favorite high-end knives from 2020. The reason there are no honorable mentions in this category is because, listen, there was a lot of good stuff. There was a lot of like, hey, this is pretty good. I give this a solid B+, right? But these last 3 really stood out. Way above the other ones. Anything else like them. There were too many honorable mentions to list, right, that I handled this year. Oz Machine Company Roosevelt, definitely one of the top 3. Moving on here, a knife that you're not going to see on a lot of other lists. This was just me, right? Les George VCP version 3 flipper. Now I understand the Les George VCP V3 design. God dang, stumbled all around that. The Les George VCP V3 design was not from 2020, but this flipper version was. What's the difference? Not much. Some different milling patterns on the scales. You have 20 CV, or I'm sorry, 204P on the blade. A different steel than the CTS XHP that they were using on the original V3 models. And actually, the Les George VCP was from way a super long time ago, right? So I'm still counting this because it's just different enough, right? Enough changes there that to me it's a 2020 release. This is an expensive knife. They came in between $400 and $450. These are U.S. made. These are small batch. I think you can actually still get these right now. Minimal hardware, large heads. T15 on the pivot, and I think either T8 or T10 on the hardware. Titanium running on bearings. Beautiful action, beautiful flipping action, excellent blade profile. It's one of my favorite overall profiles of a knife that has ever existed, and the fact that they added a flipper tab to it just made me love it that much more. This is a wonderful knife. Wonderful. I can't stress that enough because I think I'm going to be one of the only channels that lists this as one of the best knives of 2020. I don't care. I don't care if I'm one of the only channels. I love this knife, and I'm going to tell you guys how I feel. If you regularly spend money in this price range, you know what to look for in this price range, you appreciate the extra work and the US factor, right? Yeah, definitely. You're going to like this knife. It's really, really well done. Anybody who has it, down below, you can tell other people about it too, right? If you have this knife and you love it, back me up, because it's really, really good. Moving on here, the final knife in the high-end, I'm sure you guys can guess, the Demco 8020. This is a big knife. It is a bulky knife. It is also a ridiculously unavailable knife. I have a good feeling we're going to see a lot more of these. I don't work for the Demco brothers. I have no involvement. I do own this knife in full titanium. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more. So, if you're mad because you can't get it, don't fret. I think you'll be able to get it soon. So a lot of people are going to find that the largeness, the heaviness, the bulkiness is a problem for them. I don't care about that. Me personally, I don't care. I actually really like that. I'm a fan of big, chunky, heavy-duty knives, right? The only issue I have with this knife is the bill on the pocket clip. Outside of that, this is the most... This is one of the most excellent knives that's ever existed. You have as far as different versions of this that are available, you have the MG versions, which is what I own, the MG G10 version and the MG titanium version, coming in at either $425 for G10 or $625 for titanium. Then you have the custom versions, $825 or so for the G10 version, and probably more, maybe $1,000, maybe $1,200. I honestly don't know. I've never seen a titanium custom, something around there for the customs. You have a choice between a slotted blade and a non-slotted blade. And then as far as steels go, I've seen 3V and 20CV, both dark DLC coated and non-DLC or stone washed. The custom versions come in a satin hand-ground blade. That's why they cost more money. Whatever version, this is stupidly excellent. The handle ergonomics are so good. The choke-up position is fantastic. The flat on the blade gives it that robust, thick feeling, right? But the edge geometry is pretty good. It is pretty thick behind the edge, but it'll definitely cut and definitely slice. The main thing here is that shark lock. Arguably just as strong as the Cold Steel Triad Lock. I'm sure Cold Steel fans will light me up in the comment section. This lock is made by your savior, guys. It's Andrew Demco. He made the Triad Lock too. So, hey, he knows what he's doing is what I'm saying. He's going to make a robust lock. The Scorpion Lock, the Shark Lock, the Triad Lock, all incredibly robust locks, right? But this has fidget factor. I thought that maybe the idea with this lock was to capitalize on the fascination with fidget factor here in 2020. I was wrong about that. This lock has actually been in development since long before people really gave a crap about that. So it just worked out. The axis, it pulls back, there's a coil spring in there, it releases and the blade falls on bearings, right? Drops shut. Then you can either pull back on it and whip it out, you can reverse flick it, you can thumb flick it, right? It makes this sound like a Glock reloading, like... It's so good. Oh, man, it is so satisfying. I love this knife. The texture pattern on it, right? The hardware is massive. You have those big old T8 screws or maybe even T10 screws. I honestly can't remember. Titanium, full titanium versions have no liners. The G10 versions have steel liners. The way that it locks up is this. If you were going to take a expensive US-made knife out and just beat the crap out of it, I think I would trust this knife over anything else on the market. I mean that. I would rather beat the crap. If I was going to beat the crap out of a super high-end US-made knife, I would rather do it with this. And I think this could withstand just about anything. The only thing that's going to be tougher than this or stronger than this is a fixed blade, right? But at that point, whatever it is that you're doing with your knife, you probably need a tool. You probably need a hammer or a pry bar, right? This thing is monstrously well made. It also has perfect fit and finish. I literally found zero flaws with mine. God, this thing is so good. All right, it's time for the last screen. I'm going to pick one knife from each category, tell you guys what I think is the absolute best of the best budget knife, the best mid-range knife, and the best high-end knife of 2020. Are you guys ready? here we go. It's these three right here. For budget, the CIVIVI Ordos coming in at $40. Sorry, this was just, honestly, it was by quite a bit. I love the Ordos that much. If you have ever considered that knife, pick it up. It's wonderful. It makes an excellent gift, right? Whether you're a knife person, non-knife person, enthusiast, collector, whatever, it's great. For mid-range, yeah, it's definitely the Protec Malibu. I mean, the fidget factor here and the carry profile and just, God, the look of it. I mean, I'm a big fan of simplicity. You can see a consistency across the board here of what I look for, right, in my knives. Yeah, I wish it was more available right now. I'm sure that it will be. That button lock is the single most satisfying button lock and combination flipper tab that has existed, right? And on top of that, again, the materials, the chamfering, right, the carry profile, the blade profile, edge geometry, all of that, so good. And then, by a landslide, actually, this the final knife here, the Andrew Demco AD20 or the MG AD20, is not only the best high-end knife of 2020 out of all the ones that I listed. I'm also going to give that one best of 2020, period. And honestly, that knife is so far ahead of everything. Like, there were a lot of knives that I liked this year, a lot. But that AD20 is so, I cannot stress enough how far ahead that knife is than anything else. Anything else. I mean, there's just nothing that came out in 2020 that even came close. That thing, from the moment that I handled it the first time, I was like, this is the greatest. This, not only is it the best of the high end for 2020, the best knife of 2020, I think the AD20 is one of the greatest knives to have ever existed. Bold statement, right? No, I cannot tell you how confident I am in that statement. It will be a long time before something... I've loved the XM18 more than anything for so long. I'm talking like a decade, right? This is the first knife in probably 10 years that has given me more joy, that I've loved more than the XM18. Does that mean I'm going to stop buying XM18s? No, I love the XM18. I've loved it forever, right? It was bound to happen at some point, right? MG AD20, any version of the AD20, G10, titanium, whatever blade shape, whatever blade steel. That thing is excellent. Literally, just the bill on the pocket clip is like, why does it angle down a little bit? Oh well. That's the only bad thing. Some people, again, like I said, some people aren't going to like the size and the weight of it, right? Or it's going to be illegal in their area. For those of you who can carry that knife legally or are not bothered by that stuff, or specifically people who like big, heavy-duty, super strong, overbuilt knives, you like U.S.-made knives, right? Yeah. Yeah. The Demco brothers absolutely hit a massive grand slam with that thing. I'm sure that we'll see more. If you, get an opportunity to pick one up and you can fit it into your budget, you will be happy with that knife. It is that good. Guys, that's going to conclude the best of 2020 for the Metal Complex YouTube channel. I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope you were entertained, right? Like I said, many of these knives you can pick up, so I will link them down in the description. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.